Good afternoon, folks. This is Adam Cole, one of your CEMA reps here at the county. Thanks everyone for joining us today. We have the agenda posted in chat with 5 items, but before we get into that, let's go around for a round of introductions with the staff and board members present. Zeb?
Hi, everybody. Zeb Feldman, Senior OE3 Business Agent, attached to the CEMA unit, and of course, out of the San Jose office. So why don't I turn it over to Lawrence?
Hi, folks. Lawrence Sue, one of your 4 CEMA OE3 Business Agents. I'll pass it on to Jonathan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Jonathan Brown, one of your 4 CEMA OE3 Business Agents, assigned mostly to Monterey County. And back, well, I'll pass it to Mary Beth. Sorry.
Hello, I'm Mary Beth Rogers. My full-time job is a management analyst out at the Social Services Agency, and I was elected to the CEMA Executive Board as a member at large a few years back, and I chair the membership committee.
Wonderful.
And we do have, I don't see any other board members, but we do have one of the members of CEMA's bargaining team on the call here, Giri from Pharmacy. If you're able to unmute and say hi real quick, Gary, you're welcome to.
Hi, this is Gary. I'm one of the supervising pharmacists from Pharmacy. Glad to be here and thank you for your confidence.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. So we have 5 items on the agenda today. Like I said, we're talking about upcoming CEMA elections, a little bit about implementation of the nurse increases and retro pay timeline for folks. Then we'll be talking about CEMA negotiations, making another pitch for the CAT team and talk about some of the work going on there, and then end with some discussions about growing CEMA's membership and some additional units that are looking to come on, as well as growing our membership here at the county. At the end of that, we will take some time for questions at the end. I imagine we'll have some likely about negotiations and how that's going so far. As always, for any questions that you have, when we get this number of people, please feel free to put them in chat. You can either message them to me if it's a direct message type question, or you can just put them in the general chat for everybody. So with our first agenda item for CEMA elections, Zeb, would you like to tackle that one real quick?
Sure. So I'm going to share my screen. So everybody knows we are in the midst of the nomination period for our current elections. So what that means is that you are anybody that's eligible to run, which includes any member that's been in good standing for the past year. That means that they've been a member for the past year, right? That they've been dues paying. So if you signed up a month ago, you would not be eligible, as an example. So what I'm sharing right now is the CEMA website. You can see that on the main page is this election notification. So there's an independent election committee, and that's important for you all to know because it does not report to the board. While it does give reports to the board, it does not answer to the board, I suppose is what I should have said. So according to the bylaws, the election committee sets the rules and informs all members as well as the board itself as to the rules within the context and guidelines that the bylaws set out. So you can see those rules posted here, very easy to access. As you saw, I just clicked on it from the website. Also, if you wanted to, you could go into the executive board. You can see that it's the first item there as well. Click here for the elections information, brings you to the same place. So what I'd like to point out for this, I'm going to point out some items from the calendar of events, but then you all can read the particulars of the nomination process and the guidelines, and I'll briefly share the nomination petition itself. So you can see here, all of the officer positions are up for election. Right now, we have a great board. Rumor has it that a majority of that board is going to stay, or is going to seek re-election, I guess I should say. So at least if that prevails, we'll have some seasoned hands at the wheel. But of course, anyone that wishes to is welcome to run. So you can see here, we've got the president, senior vice president, treasurer, secretary. Secretary is responsible for the notes and agendizing items for the board. The treasurer handles the money and makes sure that we're getting adequate reports and gives reports to the committees about their current spend and their budgets. The vice president and senior vice president assist the president in conducting the meetings as well as chair committees themselves. And of course, the president is the chairperson of all of the meetings that happen and generally has a little bit more authority within the bylaws to conduct the day-to-day affairs of leadership decisions within the chapter. Also of note, you can see that Santa Clara County, which I'm assuming most people on this call are, has the largest number of members at large with 3. That means that only Santa Clara County members can run for these 3 slots. So for example, if you were from the court or if you were from Monterey, you cannot run for the 3 Santa Clara members at large. Similarly, if we were talking to members from Monterey, they would be eligible to run for this, and members from Santa Clara could not run for the Monterey County seat. However, anyone can run for the officer positions. And that has happened before, that one of the less populous units has held 1 or 2 of the officer positions in years past. So nomination, you can look at all these here if you are interested. The important thing for, I think, you all to look at, I'm going to switch the share screen here, is the nomination petition itself. So if you see one of your colleagues coming around and you support them, of course, be sure to sign their form. You can see that you can email it to elections@sccema.org. That's the most important thing. And that one bit of the calendar I'm going to cover right now, 8/14, meaning the 14th of this month at 3 p.m. That's the last day to submit by email your nomination form. You need at least 10 signatures of dues paying members. This is where some people get tripped up. You'll see that the form has room for 20. Do yourself a favor and get more than 10. If you're thinking about running, what's happened in years past is people get exactly 10, and it turns out that someone thought they were in CEMA, but in fact they're in whatever, RNPA, or they're in SEIU, or they think that they're paying dues and they are not, right? They just haven't paid dues in a couple years or 6 months or whatever it's been. And so they might very well be CEMA represented, but they sign your form and then they're not eligible. So be sure to go ahead and get a few more just in case that happens. Whatever you like, 15, 20 is great. You only need 10. And as I've been saying this whole time, if you can't get 15 or 20 people to sign your nomination, you probably will not prevail as a candidate anyhow. So just wanted to share that with everybody. And one other thing that's been causing some questions here is a brief description of duties, no more than 20 words. What that is that this is not a job interview. It's just to give people a sense of what you do, right? So you could say, I'm an accountant in SSA for the Adoption Services Bureau. Okay, got it, right? I don't need to know every single thing you do or every detail. Just gives people an idea of what you do and the department you work for. Anything that any of the other reps or Mary Beth you want to mention about the nomination and election process?
Just a reminder that the terms are now for 3 years. They used to be for 2 years. That was changed in the last bylaws. So it'll be a 3-year time commitment, and it's not required for you to obviously stay through the entire tenure, but the hope is that, folks who are running are going to be here through at least planning to work for the 3 years with the county to have that tenure.
Yep, absolutely right. And we have gotten a few questions about what the time commitment is. It's very similar to, I guess, what others have said about serving on a school board. Like, well, to do it well, it takes anywhere from 8 to 12 hours a pay period. To do it mediumly, or however you want, mediocrely, is that a word? It takes 2 hours, and to do it badly, it takes none or 1. So it's just kind of like how much involvement you want, how involved in the committees you want to be, and what your impact on the unit would be. So I would encourage people to think about two hours a week is probably a good yardstick, but it could be a little bit more than that. All right, well, I think that's it. If there are questions, yep.
Yeah, thanks, Ed, for hitting that. Second item on our agenda, and feel free to put any of those questions in chat. We'll get to them at the end. Is implementation timelines on our nursing increases. So as a reminder, CEMA was able to agree with the county to implement 8% raises for our RNPA aligned classifications, following that wave of realignments that came out to the majority of RNPA members over the last 6 months. Those raises have now been implemented. However, we had a subset of those folks who are going to be receiving retroactivity, our nurse manager type classifications. And not everyone, or I would say, I think not most people have not yet received that retro and didn't get it on the check where their increase went live. So doing some follow-up on this, what we found is that payroll right now only has one employee, and she's actually a CEMA member, so I feel quite bad of her and hope we could get some support for her. We only have one member, one payroll employee right now who's able to do retro checks that require a retroactive adjustment to CalPERS. And when we call something official retroactivity, as opposed to, if something's a one-time bonus or something like that, as we got in that last contract that did not require a CalPERS adjustment, this does increase PERSable income. So right now, those retro checks are sitting in a large queue with a lot of other adjustments, and they'll be coming out to folks as she works her way through and implements those. So as I understand it, I think some people have already received that, others have not, and it should be forthcoming in the next few weeks, is what I've heard from our member. So thanks for your patience on that, folks. And I think we all know that payroll's been unfortunately more behind than usual ever since COVID. The number of individual adjustments to checks has gone up substantially. So folks should be seeing those retro checks soon, and thanks for your patience on that. And we'll take any questions on that in chat as well at the end. Moving on to, I think, our more substantial chunks of the site meeting today, we'll be talking a little bit about negotiations and then about the CAT team. So first on the negotiations update. So since the last VMC and HHS site meeting, CEMA has officially launched negotiations with the county. So we had our first day of negotiations 2 weeks ago. As a reminder to folks, this is well in advance of when CEMA would normally start negotiations, or where we have in the past. Our contract doesn't end for about 11 months. We're starting early now for a number of reasons. One, even prior to the discussions with the county about the contract extension that we discussed here a lot over the last 6 months, we were looking to start negotiations early this time around for a handful of reasons. One, it took us almost 11 months to settle on a contract last bargaining cycle. And that puts us in a difficult position of having to try to, at the end of negotiations, try to get some value for retroactivity for those missed wage increases. We don't want to be in that position again. We'd like to have the time to devote to getting a good contract. And then just kind of the state of the field as far as bargaining is likely preferential for us to be bargaining right now, as opposed to, only a few months in advance of the expiration of the contract. So the county and CEMA agreed to a start date 2 weeks ago, but at that initial meeting, there were no proposals passed yet. We hit, kind of basic stuff to get the negotiation process underway. So reviewed ground rules, introductions, a schedule for bargaining, and we'll be picking up with bargaining in earnest on August 22nd. In between that first date and the 22nd, the county will be getting actual authority for bargaining from the Board of Supervisors, which they didn't have when we met for the first day. What that means for folks who are new to the bargaining process, when you get authority, county administration, with all of you going up to James Williams, don't have any authority on your own under law to spend county money without authorization from the Board of Supervisors. So when the county administration is getting ready to go into bargaining, they need to get authority for how much money the board is willing to authorize them to spend in negotiations. And that number can change over time. We know, for example, in last negotiations, we had to appeal to the board to increase the authority so that we could get a reduction to our pension contribution, right? But there's an initial authorization for authority that labor relations needs to get prior to going into bargaining. They'll be getting that in closed session authorization from the board prior to our August 22nd next date. So what folks will expect moving forward is that we'll be spending, likely about half or so of our site meetings for the next few months, specifically discussing negotiations and how things are going. We likely won't have any immediate asks from CEMA members with regard to negotiations. During the opening kind of salvos of negotiations, CEMA and the county will be presenting all of our initial proposals. Once all of those initial proposals from CEMA are on the table, we'll then be able to share them generally with the membership. The bargaining team is not going to be sharing them in advance of presenting them at the table. And the reason for that is a couple-fold. One, we want the bargaining team to have the first opportunity to explain and characterize our proposals for the county, rather than if we just shared a list here of all of our proposals, at least one person would forward it over to someone that would then forward it, and it would end up in labor relations hand, and they would reach all their own conclusions and thoughts about our proposals prior to CEMA having an opportunity to present them first, which is not ideal. But folks can anticipate that the list of priorities and proposals that are CEMA is going to be presenting come directly from those 3 bargaining surveys that we've sent out, as well as the priorities that we had last bargaining cycle that didn't make it into the contract. And then once we have all those proposals formally on the table with the county, we'll then be able to share those more specifically with membership. And folks who have been here through previous negotiations know there will be a fairly high degree of transparency with the general membership about what's going on in negotiations and how the process is going. Like I said in the beginning, I don't anticipate that we'll need anything immediately from the membership. However, in our last bargaining cycle, member involvement and turnout was critical to getting us the contract that we have right now. The reason for that is that if we don't have any recourse to escalate issues if necessary away from the bargaining table, then frankly, we're in a position where we just have to accept whatever county administration is willing to offer us after, myself and Zeb and Lawrence and your bargaining team have exhausted whatever eloquence and persuasion we have at the bargaining table. If we don't ultimately then want to accept that offer, we need to have a recourse to do something else. And that means direct involvement with members. So folks will recall last bargaining cycle, we had, multiple turnouts at the board of supervisors. We had a social media campaign, we produced video series. All that work was instrumental in actually getting us the contract that we're on right now. And we'll need to be, prepared to take those same or similar steps this bargaining cycle if we're not ultimately happy with whatever deal administration is willing to put on the table for CEMA. So we generally have fairly low asks for time involvement in CEMA wide issues from the membership. However, this is the time where your involvement is going to be critical. And the reason for that is we only get, one chance to bargain CEMA's contract that we're going to be under for the next, 3 odd years, whatever the term ends up being. And if we're not happy with the deal that we get, there's no do-overs, right? We can't go back and say, oh man, maybe we could have gotten something better if we just had a little bit better strategy or turnout or what have you. So this is the opportunity. Additionally, we're at that point right now where we're coming off of record high inflation for my entire lifetime, right? And this is the time where we're either going to be able to do something about it or not. If we don't do something about it now, it's going to be a moot point in 3 or 4 years to try to pick it up and do something about it then. There may be continuing inflation to address at that point, but this record high, almost 7% inflation is, this is the opportunity we have to do something about that. Okay, let me pause right there. I got a couple questions about negotiations.
If you want to skip to a news, I can address Stacy's question. So Stacy's asking if our staff received realignments, meaning SEIU or others that are reporting to you, received realignments, how will we make sure that the managers over these staff also get realigned? Sure, so that's part of the negotiation team's responsibility as well as staff. It's something that we're doing right now. As Adam mentioned, we're looking at the economic benefits that other units got, namely RNPA, CPOA recently, and then it did a moment ago, SEIU, assuming their contract is ratified and so on. So what realignments they got, and then how that corresponds to our members. Here's the rub though. The survey is going to be critical in that will ask very specifically, did your members get a realignment? And the reason that will be critical is Some positions are very obvious, right? Social work supervisor supervises social workers, right? A PM2, I don't know what a PM2 can supervise almost anything under the sun. Program manager too, for those keeping score at home. So that's where we rely on you. What do you supervise, right? So we can look at the realignments and see, oh, look, environmental health specialist senior got an 8% increase. Well, whoever supervises that very likely needs to have a realignment, which then we can advocate for. I can't guarantee it right now, but we'll advocate for at the table. But if someone other than the environment health specialist manager supervises those folks, that's where we need you to help us out as to who's supervising it. But it's a great question, Stacey.
And in the most recent CEMA survey that went out, there was a question specifically about compaction, right? Which is when one of your subordinates makes less than 10% less than you do. So they're within 10% at base pay. We will be surveying on that again once the SEIU contract goes into effect. So for folks who hadn't heard yet, I think they're voting this week on it. SEIU and the county reached a final tentative agreement on their negotiations. I can go ahead and put a link in chat if folks would like to read through the final terms of that negotiation. What you'll need to do is click on tentative agreement when you go to either the master contract or the side tables to see what they actually agreed upon. And the broad terms of that contract were for a 3-year deal with 5% in year 1, 4% in year 2, and 4% in year 3. So that's straightforward and easy to calculate the impact on CEMA. However, what's more difficult, that Zeb was pointing out, are the individual classification realignments, and that's what generally causes compaction with our supervisor and manager classifications after SEIU's negotiations. So to see those increases, you need to go to the unit tables and then click on the TA, and you'll see in there what the increases are that came out. And like Zeb said, in some cases it's obvious who. It's clear who a criminalist 3 reports to. They report to CEMA's supervising criminalists, right? But our more generic classifications represent everything under the sun, our program managers and other similarly titled positions. So what we did last time to address the compaction concerns were bargain over individual realignments that came out in the first year of last negotiations. That's one method to address it. And the CAT team put together a tool, and we'll likely do something similar again once we have the final numbers from SEIU, that allowed you to put in your classification and then your highest paid subordinate, and it just did the math for you to determine whether you were compacted or not. So once these, once this contract goes forward, assuming SEIU votes in favor of it and the board implements it, we'll be able to do something similar. And then we will resurvey specifically on compaction, whatever additional issues need to be surveyed on at that point in time, to give folks an opportunity to let us know where those compaction issues are in the county. And then to a news question briefly, in that same survey, there was also a question in there for us to make sure we have identified all of the nursing classifications that need to be aligned with our NPA that are not. That includes our director of quality position. It includes our health center managers and others. So we folks can anticipate that will be a proposal in bargaining to get those folks aligned that should have been aligned in this prior cycle and weren't, or those newly created classifications like healthcare service line director that should be aligned and have not yet been, because they're fairly new positions. So that is a pending priority, and that's an example of kind of language in the contract that just always needs to be updated, which makes it less than ideal language. It's nice to have things that don't require manual updating every time you're at the table, but that's an example of something that does need to be addressed every time to capture those new classifications. Okay. Yeah, there's a question here as well in chat about the difference in PERS. Yeah, it is somewhat difficult to identify compaction because of the PERS delta. What we can say is that the county's position and ESA's position right now is that they no longer factor PERS into the compaction analysis between SEIU and CEMA since the 5% pension reduction that was in CEMA's last contract. That's not something we would agree with. But it is a smaller delta than it was before, particularly for our Pepper folks. Okay, so let me real quick pause I saw Andrew Crockett came in through the waiting room a little bit ago, another member of our bargaining team. If you'd like to unmute and introduce yourself real quick, Andrew.
Yes, I'm Andrew Crockett, Senior Healthcare Financial Analyst and CPA. I am on the bargaining team, and I am looking forward to getting us the best darn contract we possibly can. So that's anything else you think is relevant, Adam?
Nope, I think that's good. Just wanted to say, I think we've got some good representation from around health and hospital on our bargaining team this time around. So thanks to Andrew and Gary for volunteering to join. Unfortunately, with CEMA's bargaining team, it's, because all of you guys are in salaried positions, it usually just means an extra, 10 to 16 hours of work a week for folks. So, myself, Zeb, and Lawrence, we're paid staff, right? This is our job, but we really appreciate the work that CEMA members take to go above and beyond and help, get the best contract you guys can for everyone here. Okay, well, let me move on briefly to the CAT team. So CEMA has reconstituted its contract action team. This is a group that meets in support of the bargaining team once a week to work on contract language and any research that needs to be done in support of negotiations. It additionally acts as a well of experience. We unfortunately can't have someone from every single department in the county on the negotiations team. So it's helpful to have a sounding board for, proposal language to say, hey, how would, contract language that modified how supplemental questionnaires work impact the sheriff's department or custody health? We might not have somebody from one of those departments on the bargaining team. So the CAT team is meeting Thursday evenings from 5 to 6:30. You're welcome to email myself or one of the other reps directly for a link. We're meeting both in person for the time being, as well as having a remote option. And that group has been fantastic so far. We've gotten some great language on telework already. And it's a way that you can have a tangible impact on, the actual contract that we're all going to end up with for the next, 3 odd years. And it's additionally a great stepping stone if you have, interest in being on the bargaining team in a future year or CEMA's executive board. It's a great way to dip your toe and getting a little more involved in understanding, the negotiation process, how CEMA conducts itself, how we lobby the board of supervisors on our issues. It's a great introduction to that, as well as a lot of fun, and it's already producing some great results. So thanks to the folks here. I see we have a number who've been attending those meetings weekly already. Thanks for your participation, and anybody else who would like to join, please feel free to just reach out for the link. It's not a publicly available link just because, we don't want somebody from labor relations, for example, listening in on our CAT team meetings. So you have to reach out directly for that. Let me pause there for any additions from Lawrence or Zeb on the CAT team or anything else on negotiations.
Just that it looks like there's a couple of requests, public and private, for the survey link. So I'm just going to post that in the chat. Don't share that with others. The purpose is to survey members, right? So you don't want to share that with anybody else, unless there's a concern from the staff about sharing that on this site meeting. I'll go ahead and share it. And then with regard, go ahead.
Yeah, it seems fine to share it.
With regards to the CAT team, that's also a key feature. The CAT team is doing many things, but that's a key feature as well, is that coming up with worthwhile questions to ask in future surveys is an important part of the CAT team, as well as information that we're lacking for key information requests we make from the employer. But yeah, thank you.
Okay. And then I wanted to insert two quick things on here that didn't make it onto the agenda. The first one is that we discussed at the last VMC site meeting, moving this back to a not back, I guess this would be the first time ever having a hybrid model for a VMC HHS site meeting. We used to be in person entirely. For those other site meetings that we've already moved back to in person, we're doing a hybrid model. And unfortunately, the second Tuesday of the month from 12 to 1 already has pretty much all the major rooms that would accommodate us booked up with ongoing meetings. So I wanted to do a quick on-the-spot poll for folks. If you can put in chat whether you'd prefer to maintain the 12 to 1 time slot, and then we'll just need to pick a different day of the month moving forward. Or if second Tuesday is better, and either 11 to 12 or 1 to 2, keeping that same day of the week would be better. So if you could just put in either whether 12 to 1 is better, or whether second Tuesday is important in chat. If we can just do a quick poll around that, that'll help us get the schedule at a different time. The reason we need to keep it, or the reason we want to move it back to in person is it's been, if folks think about negotiations, going back 4 years ago, when it was time to get in front of the Board of Supervisors, for example, we had everyone turned out, working on their posters together, putting down whatever the impact of the pension disparity was on you or how much it contributed towards CalPERS, all those kind of things. So it's a little bit easier to kind of rope and wrangle folks and get everyone organized if we're not trying to turn people out in person for the first time 3 months from now when it becomes important, if we get to that point. Okay, so it seems like overwhelmingly lunchtime is the preference. So next month we will pick a different day for the VMC and hospital site meeting.
Yeah, it appears the universe is in agreement that 12 to 1 is the desirable slot here.
That was generally what I would anticipate, but thanks folks for responding. And we'll keep a hybrid option there for folks who can't, but I'd strongly encourage everyone to turn out. And if people remember, we'll have swag and raffle prizes and all those things that we used to do for in-person site meetings back in the day. We'll be doing all those things again.
Yeah, we
so
used to do
looking forward
well, we'll figure out what swag we give away, but yeah, movie tickets used to be
Yeah, those were popular back in the day.
du jour. I hear Barbieheimer is a good
Barbenheimer. Yeah, I think we might have missed the month that would have been last month to get folks their Barbenheimer tickets.
That's true. That's so passé.
Getting a lot of messages from folks that it'll be difficult for people who don't work at VMC to attend this meeting. We're going to keep it as a hybrid, so we'll have that's what we do for the couple other ones I have that we've shifted back to in person. Behavioral health, for example, we have a hybrid site meeting that works fine. So we'll have a speakerphone there set up in a video so that folks can watch along. Okay. Well, let me move on to I think our last agenda item here, which is growing CEMA membership. So Zeb, if you could tackle Santa Cruz and other areas briefly, and then I'll ask Lawrence to tackle the Be a Member Drive.
Sure. Before I launch into that, why don't I just have Jonathan briefly talk about Monterey, the number of unit members there, and how you guys got brought on, if you could, for a moment.
Yeah, in Monterey, we organized about 2 years now. We have just south of 300 members of a 438 member unit. So doing fairly well. Memberships is ticking up as people get used to us being there and just kind of moving strong. Zeb, would you like me to tackle Santa Cruz or San Benito at all?
Sure, go ahead and talk about those. I have them posted in chat as potential.
Yep. So Zeb and I have been working on bringing aboard Santa Cruz. So Santa Cruz Mid Managers Associations, or MMA, has shown a very high interest, and we have drafted a contract that we'll be presenting to them next Tuesday or Wednesday, to their entire membership. We've already presented it to the MMA executive board, and they're in agreement with what we gave them. So we're hoping the membership will be as well, and we'll be bringing them on, I hope, next month. We are also been in talks with San Benito's Meg Group. They've entered negotiations with their county, and through that, we've been able to give them some advice where we can, but it looks like they're gonna finalize their contract, and then we're going to be seeing if we can represent those folks as well. So you have a very vibrant and thriving union where we're getting a lot of interest and continue to grow.
Just as a
Yeah, thank
reminder,
you.
unlike other unions, and probably all other unions of the county, CEMA doesn't employ any organizers. The staff that we have, are focused on representation. So other units looking to join CEMA as a result of folks, self-organizing and approaching CEMA's board and saying, hey, would you consider letting us join CEMA, which is a good position to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we're really excited about the growth. For those of you that have heard me speak for the years, my first priority is to enhance services within our current membership. And then, of course, the second priority is to expand the union in several ways. Number one, so that we have greater union density, which gives us more power when we're bargaining with the employers. And number two, so that we have a broader regional reach, which also gives us more power. And to that point, I want to cover the growing internal percentages. Monterey was brought on about a little more than a year ago. And you can see in what I posted in chat, I'll post these numbers once again. They're at 68% union density, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Anything north of 50% is pretty good in these United States. But our executive board has set a goal of 80% for all of our units. You can see the court is showing up every other unit with 87% union density. However, it should be noted that, and this isn't a knock on the court, they have great density. Their size, however, is that of a mid-sized department in the county in terms of membership. So it's a much smaller unit, but there's certainly union activists over there. And then you can see Santa Clara County has ticked up. We're very proud of this number as to 73%. When I first came on 11 years ago, we were at about 55%, let's say mid-50s, 55% union density. And we've been growing both in terms of raw numbers, but also in terms of percentage. So now we're at about 73%, which is great. That gives us that 1802 number. And it's something that, we're certainly shooting for 80. And we've made strides of probably 4%. Does that sound about right, folks? We've increased about 4% since we started our membership drive efforts post-pandemic. And we did see a dip, just to kind of track the ball, which we track very closely with terms of union density. We did see a dip in union density as a result of the VSIP, or Voluntary Separation Incentive Program, which was implemented, about 2.5 years ago now. And many of the 130 odd people who took advantage of VSIP, a disproportionate number of those were union activists and members, right? Something like 80–85% of those who took the VSIP were union members. But that doesn't mean we don't want to bargain for things that benefit people who want to leave, right? We don't want to, get those golden handcuffs clawed into you. We want to make sure that your current work life and your future retirement life are the best they can. Mary Beth, you're up.
Yeah. I think that when I first came on the board, we were at 67 or 68%. So I actually think we're up to up 5 or 6% since then.
Oh, even better. Then I'm underreporting our gains. Thank you, Mary Beth.
Sure. Yeah, as membership, chair of the membership committee, that's something I look at. And
and Mary Beth has done a great job on that of not only attending so many of these meetings, but appearing at NEOs when we're introducing the union to new folks, and also just keep making sure that we have an ample supply of swag and membership, goodies to kind of hand out, which enhances our branding. And then, of course, it's always nice when you're attending a NEO in person. I know, Adam, you had one yesterday. Lawrence and I had one 2 weeks ago, or actually that was Adam, you and I had one 2 weeks ago at the Isaac Newton Center and conference room. And when you can present like the whole package of, here's the membership packet, here's information about the union, and here's a mug and or a t-shirt and a pen, it's just much better than kind of like, and here's a button we have left over from 4 years ago that nobody wanted, right? So that always helps as well. Well, thank you, Kathy. I'm glad. Yeah, we're all very happy to see the growth, and you all are recruiters as well, right? So one of the reasons that we're getting so much interest from Santa Cruz, San Benito, even Monterey, is people who were CEMA members here either moved over there and then agitated for a union, or they're like, hey, look at that deal that mid-level managers got over in Santa Cruz. Who's repping them? We'd like to have a similar treatment here. And that really helps when you guys are out there spreading the word as well to your colleagues. All right, thanks. That's all I have on this item.
Thanks, Ed. Well, Lawrence, if you could tackle the be a member draft we're going through right now.
Absolutely. All right. Go ahead and share my screen very quickly. So
Can't,
folks.
yeah, can't quite hear you.
I can hear you fine, Lawrence. I think it's on Mary Beth's side.
Oh,
Oh,
let me
okay.
check my volume.
All right. Yeah, so August is our membership drive this year, the membership month, and we're calling it the hashtag CEMA Proud to be a Member. For folks who might recall the hashtag we like to use both on, well, I would say Twitter, but now it's called X, and also on Facebook. And so August, anyone who submits their membership application in the month of August, particularly for the non-members. So if you know any non-members, this is a great time for them to be able to submit their application, because if they do, they'll be entered into a raffle to win one of 6 prizes. One of those prizes being a 1-year free membership for CEMA, and also one of 5 $50 gift cards. So if you know of any non-dues paying members or any new hires, this is definitely the time to sign up. It's even ever more so important for folks to sign up, because as we're heading into contract negotiations, having, as Zeb and others have mentioned, a much more denser union in terms of membership density is super important. Having a very well-engaged membership is also quite important too. So increasing our numbers is going to be very crucial to making sure that we have very strong negotiations. So definitely encourage your fellow coworkers and newer coworkers to sign up for CEMA membership today. All right.
Great, thanks, Lawrence. Zeb, well, if you want to end the recording here, we can tackle any additional questions we had, and we'll chat a little bit more as well.
All right, sounds good. So what we have here will be concluded, and I'll upload it as soon as it's done rendering, so people can find it on our YouTube page shortly, which I will post as soon as we are done.